Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
Today we're taking a look at Hero Master.
Hero Master is brought to you by the Noble Artist. It plays 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and each game takes about an hour to play.
Great, well let's jump into this epic game of epic fails. In Hero Master, you don't play as one of the big, brave, and bold heroes. No. You're one of the other guys. You know, the ones that are prone to accidents, the ones that are lazy, and heck, the halflings over in the corner half asleep. So you play as one of these misfits, and you're going to band together with this misfit group, trying to go on an adventure to find the most gold. And ultimately, you may have to step on some of your party members to do so. But in the end, it's all about the adventure.
At the beginning of each game of Hero Master, each player will be randomly assigned a race, such as human, elf, halfling, or dwarf, as well as a class, such as wizard, rogue, priest, or barbarian. For each of these, you'll get a stack of cards, and these contain your action cards as well as your starting equipment.
And then you have the central game board, and this is where all the adventuring will take place. And on this board is where you'll find the monsters that are lurking in the shadows, as well as the encounter space where you'll encounter a single monster. And you'll find a spot where monsters can ambush the party from, as well as your location, the location you are currently visiting and trying to make it through. Also, the board will hold a spot for all the loot that you'll find in this particular encounter.
To begin your adventure, you'll follow the rules for constructing your location deck and your monster deck and put those near the main player board. Additionally, you'll put nearby the treasure deck, the protest deck, and the critical fail deck.
And then you're going to have the roll-off to see who the start player is. You're going to roll that 20-sided dice to see who gets the highest value.
And that proves which of the heroes are the least incompetent.
Indeed.
The player with the party leader token has 2 advantages. First, he gets to choose between the locations being explored in this particular round. He will choose 2 cards from the top of the location deck and choose between them. Each location card has a number of elements describing what you're going to encounter this particular round. In the upper left, you'll see a red circle showing the number of monsters that will be spawned for this location. You will draw this number of cards from the top of the monster deck, with the first monster being placed in the ambush slot here in the lower right of the central game board. The remaining monsters drawn will be put up here at the top of the central board in the lurking monster spots. If the location card shows a sign that says beware of a particular monster, that monster will be summoned in the far right slot of the lurking monster spaces. Additionally, in the upper right, you'll see the number of treasure cards that should be played near the central board, and these are treasures that could be won for each player who happens to defeat a monster. He'll have the option of choosing some of those treasures. Additionally, it'll show in a yellow circle here the number of gold coins to be placed in the loot pile here on the board. And the sooner you get a chance to defeat monsters, the sooner you'll get a chance to get gold.
It's definitely a race to the money.
It is, because as you play, you might find you defeat monsters, but there's no gold left in the loot pile. Additionally, you'll find in the lower part of the card some special characteristics. There is a special characteristic at each location for the person who happens to have the party leader token. So there are advantages to having that,
yes,
as we mentioned before. And there are also special attributes such as things that come into play when you first put the location card down, as well as things that remain active as long as the location is in play.
Now, if you look at the bottom of your player board, you'll see your starting health and what your hand size limit is. And typically you're starting with 6, unless you're the wizard who starts with 7. These are the cards you've drawn from your action deck. And this deck, again, is created via your class cards and your race cards.
The cards in your action deck come in 2 different flavors. First, there's the attack cards. These are cards that you will use to attack the monsters. Some of them show in the upper left a green die, and that shows a modifier to your dice roll, usually a plus of some sort. And then there are 4 circles here indicating the type of damage you are doing. This could be regular damage, fire damage, ice damage, or spirit damage. And there might be additionally a bonus to your armor shown in the upper right. So these are things you play on your own player board that indicates an encounter with the monster and your attempt to attack him, especially trying to attack his weak spots. And we'll talk about the mechanics in a second. There sometimes are additional aspects to the attack card down here, and you might play them not really to win, you might just play them to potentially heal some of your injuries and such. The other type of card in your action deck is called a bungle card. And these are not cards you play on yourself typically. These are cards that you play on your teammates because, as Mark said earlier, sometimes it's important to step over your opponents or sabotage them so it can be you who defeats the monster and gets the treasure.
Indeed.
Now these show a number of things. In the upper left is not a modifier to modify the dice roll. What this is it indicates the new critical fail number. They must roll higher than this number or they'll encounter a critical fail. Now we were all familiar with on a 20-sided die, a 1 is typically a critical fail. This card right here shows that it would actually be a 6 or less is considered a critical fail. Additionally, there are some we'll say some detriments or degradations to the different types of damage. If you're all set to do 6 fire damage to someone and suddenly you had this card played on you, your attack would only do 2 fire damage, and that might not be enough. Lastly, there are some aspects down here in the bungle card which might benefit you or additionally damage the other player on which you play it on. So there's definitely a take that aspect.
Huge take that in this aspect. So even though you're as a party traveling together, you really are trying to get the gold before anybody else.
Absolutely.
All right, so how does this turn work? So what you're going to do as the start player, you're going to be looking through your set of cards, and you're looking for that first big attack, or you might decline. And if you decline, you're basically out for that encounter.
That particular monster, you won't be fighting that monster. You're basically saying, I'm afraid, I'm not going to fight.
Away.
And there might be reasons you want to do that because the cards you have in hand, as we said, your hand size is shown down here at the bottom of the player board. That's the number of cards you have for the entire location. You don't get a redraw unless you win treasure or you finish that particular location. So you might be saying, I'm not going to fight this monster because I want to hold on until some later monsters.
Right. It's a strategic withdrawal.
It is. And maybe you don't have what it takes to kill that particular monster. So there might be reasons other than just being cowardly that you choose not to attack.
However, if you don't decline, then in turn order, everyone must go around and play 1 attack card in that slot 1 for your player boards. Now, after that, though, you have the choice to either pass, I'm done attacking, that's all I'm going to do for this 1 monster, or you can choose on round 2 and 3 of this attack to play a bungle card.
That's right. After the first round, everybody's put an attack card down or declined. From that point forward, you can play bungle cards or additional attacks.
Indeed, absolutely. So you potentially fill up all your attack slots and keep playing bungle cards on everybody around the table, just trying to tip the balance. Then, after all the players have passed, now it's time to battle the monster. Beginning with the start player, that player will then choose what other cards, equipment, and hero powers that they may use to augment this attack in hopes of defeating the monster. Then the active player takes the green die, and this is the die you're going to be rolling to actually try to hit this monster. And all the monsters have a defense value that you have to either meet or beat. And you just roll the dice to see if you can actually achieve this. And if you don't, hopefully you've had enough extra cards that help you augment this dice in order to actually hit the creature. However, that's only half the battle.
Right.
You've just won the right to do damage is all you've done here. And across the top of the monster card are all the different values related to its defense, right?
Yeah, basically these are his resistance to each of the damage types.
So your hero is trying to hit one of those. You don't have to get them all. You're trying to beat the monster on spirit, on fire, ice, or just basic damage. And if you do any of those things, if you do defeat the monster on any one of those, you win the battle. And then you get to take the loot and treasure.
Now, if you if you hit the monster and didn't defeat him in any particular damage areas, or you didn't hit him at all, that doesn't mean that's the end of the world here, because it's possible for the monster and you just to hit a stalemate and the monster to run away. But before we talk about the monster leaving the board, we need to talk about the fact that at the same time you are attacking the monster is attacking you. And that's where the black die comes in. Indeed. So he will roll this, and he doesn't have a bunch of cards or equipment or hero powers to use, but he will basically roll this, and if he exceeds the armor value that you have in your basic armor, which is always active, and the cards you've chosen to augment your attack this time, if he meets or exceeds that, then he will do damage to you. Now, the monsters themselves Many of them have not only amount of damage they'll do, and this is shown in the upper right, and this is the amount of damage that you will take in the lower part of your player board. You'll lose that many life. Additionally, there are things that he does if he does get off an attack.
All kinds of bad
things like having to discard random action cards and so forth. So this could put you in a bad way in the future. So after you both have exchanged damage, and potentially there will be no damage at all exchanged because you both rolled poorly, or you didn't have enough damage to actually take him down, the play proceeds to the next player. Now, before we actually do that, though, there is if there is a monster in the ambush slot, they get this cheap shot at you.
They do get a cheap shot at you.
They get to roll without you being able to attack them. So they also get to roll a black die. And again, if they meet or exceed the amount of armor you have for that particular attack, then they also get to do damage and potentially get to do some other nasty things.
And it's entirely possible that you and the monster have killed each other simultaneously.
This is true.
Now, if you are the defeated hero, well, that monster takes 3 of your gold, and he becomes more valuable to attack, because whoever goes after him next can win that gold off of him. However, you are down and out. You are wiped out. You remove your combat cards or your attack cards, and your bungle cards are removed. And then you're going to reduce your hand size down by 1 if you can. But you will come back immediately. You're going to restore your health back to 5, but your hand size is going to be limited from here on out. Now, if you do happen to heal yourself back up to 10, then your hand size will increase back up to full strength.
If you're fortunate enough not to have died during the attack, you will take each of the cards you use to augment your attack and turn it over, indicating that it has been used and exhausted. This includes both your equipment cards as well as your hero powers. Now, it's possible you didn't use any. If that's the case, you save them for later attacks, and that's good. The one exception to that is your armor. Your armor is always active, so you don't have to exhaust that. Now, these cards can be reset by other cards that might allow you to reset particular weapons or hero powers, and at the next location you do get to reset all of your equipment for free. However, your hero powers only are reset if there's a card that says you can, so use those wisely and sparingly. If you did not defeat the monster, what will happen is that play or control will pass to the next player, and they will have a chance to perform the next attack in sequence. So if I have 2 attacks set up and Mark has 3, basically he might be first player, and then we'd go around until I didn't have any left, and in which case I wouldn't do anything, and the monster doesn't have a chance to attack me because I'm not engaging him, but control would move around. And then when all the attacks have been exhausted, if the monster has not been defeated, it basically runs away, and we're very thankful for that. Otherwise, though, if a player has defeated the monster, again, they will get the loot, if there's any loot remaining in the loot pile here on the central board, and they will get a choice of the treasures that remain down here. Lastly, if all players when they're choosing a monster, choose to decline, and so nobody either has the ability to attack or they choose not to, that monster gets a free attack of opportunity. They basically get to roll the black die for each of the players and kick them in the face before they leave the board.
Indeed. Also want to briefly touch on these 2 cards. You have the protest card and the critical failure cards. Just like it sounds, critical failure is going to give you any sort of terrible things that are going to happen when you have to draw one of these. And protest cards are cool because they actually add to your action cards for that particular encounter or location if you have the lowest gold moving from one location to the other. So once you've dealt with the encounter and the location, then you move on to the next, and you're going to gather up all your cards, and this is where you get to refresh your hero and draw a whole new set of cards. Now, the game continues much like this round and round until you get to the Dragon's Den. And this is the end game. You're going to battle to see who gets all the loot and all the treasure. But the thing here is that it could be a big swing because this last location has a 20 coin value to it. So you really could swing the pendulum either way here.
Yeah, the benefit of that is that during the early rounds, you might find that the pile of loot is fairly small. Let's say there's 5 coins, and let's say there's 3 monsters, and the first monster says you get 3, and the next monster says you get 4 coins. You're saying, wait a second, there's none left for if I kill this last monster. I don't get any treasure, I don't get any gold. But the benefit of the Dragon's Den is since there's so much gold to be had, every single monster, even the last monster, counts.
Yes. And then whoever has the most gold at the end of the game wins. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, with that said, this game has a real tongue-in-cheek style. I mean, you are the worst heroes.
That's right.
And that theme really comes through. There's a lot of really fun flavor text that we didn't go into, didn't want to spoil it for folks, but it really adds to the flavor of the game, and I really enjoyed that. And I love take that in games, and this game has it in spades.
It does. Yeah.
Definitely trying to prevent them from winning that attack so it gets back around to you so you can take out the monster first.
Now there's definitely a trade-off, and I like this in this game, the aspect that you have a limited number of cards for the whole location, and you have many monsters, so if you played all your attack cards for that first monster, after the round, after that particular encounter, all of your attacks go away, and you're left with just a few cards in your hand. You might not have anything for the remaining monsters, and so sometimes you might say, look, I'm going to let Mark take the heat on this first monster. I'm going to see if I can get these remaining monsters. And the value of being the first player, or having the party leader token, is so important because you get to choose which monster you're going to have for this next encounter. So I really value that idea of saying you have a limited number of attacks, and how you use them is so important, especially since you have monsters when they hit you that might take some of those attack cards away from you.
Absolutely. There's a lot of choices to be made.
There
for
are.
Sure. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they would appreciate your support.
That's right.
And I think that's it from us. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at coolstuffinc.com.